Okay, Noradine, thank you for doing this, firstly. Really cool. We're meeting to, of course, discuss the period that I witnessed or that I observed yesterday, your financial literacy class, which started at 8 a.m. And to be sure that we understand how this process went, of course, we met, was it 2 days before the class started? To discuss essentially what I thought, or I asked you basically, do you have anything that I should look for with your teaching, as you're teaching these students? And I think the main thing that you let me know about was you wanted to test understanding of the material. And being a complex course, financial literacy, I think that was a good idea. So I came to the class a little late, but I know that you guys opened up with a discussion of the news, and you used the Wall Street Journal.
We have just started receiving it yesterday, actually,
okay.
So we've been a little behind, but we talk about the news in general.
Why do you do that?
Well, I like them to see that finance relates to their lives, and I want them to see what's happening now, especially that they're young, so they can learn lessons that we, the adult community, have made, the mistakes we've made over the years. I want the 16-year-old kids to be able to see those errors now so that they can avoid them when they grow older.
Yeah, very good. And I mean that we'll get to what happened in the lesson in a little bit. But you also asked me to look for trends that you see within the class amongst the students, and I have a few ideas for that as well.
That's perfect.
Okay, so the course had 15 students, and when I arrived, you started to discuss the difference between stocks and real estate investments, which was excellent. It was a higher level than I actually thought it was going to be. So either you've given them some, material in front of that or before that, which allowed them to understand it, or maybe they just understood it anyway. But I thought you did that really, really well. There were a few that looked a little dozy. I know it was first period, but Abdullah, for instance, was looking kind of sleepy. But then he asked a really interesting question about day trading. So maybe that's just his style. But in terms of understanding, I mean, what you asked me to look for, it was complex, and there were a few times where students tended to look like they didn't understand, but the level of discussion in the class kind of showed otherwise. People were engaged at all times, and I thought your teaching style was really good too.
Thank you.
Super loose, but also very focused, and there was clear instructions as to what each student should have been doing at all times. So that was really good. So after you talked about that, you then talked about the differences in the stock market, which was useful. You asked questions, and I was really intrigued that you got Corinne Peters to actually talk, because I had her as a student last year, and she was claimed to be a lover of history and was entirely mute, which is actually one of the most vocal students in your class.
Especially that she's one of the two girls in the class.
Yeah, so that can be intimidating. She's really shy anyway. So the fact that you got her going, I mean, she spoke, I counted 7 times that she spoke out, which is more in one class than I had the entire year. Last year.
Interesting. So
good stuff on that. That's awesome. But I did see, the same students kind of answering questions. Colin, Kevin Og, and a few others. And I know students like Basil and others are hard to get to speak, but I don't know. It was very teacher-driven, the lecture, and most of the class, but that kind of makes sense based on the fact that it is a topic that needs to be. It's not something that the students inherently know, like something I teach, I guess.
Right. Well, it really depends on the day. When I'm introducing a new concept, and I know that the kids are maybe exposed for the first time, I tend to do a little more of lecturing.
Yeah.
But then, as the ideas sink in, kids begin to take ownership. In fact, probably by tomorrow, as you mentioned, talking about real estate and stocks, that actually proves that we were just beginning the conversation about stocks, because I want them to see the advantages and disadvantages of both without having discussed any one of the two. At times, classes are student-driven, and other times I tend to lecture a little more. There are, once a week, one of the students presents on a relevant topic we're addressing. So it's a mixture. It happens to be the day you showed up.
And
I'm not against lecturing at all, but it's not always that way.
Okay, you had Abdullah and a few others come up to the board and actually draw the flow of the money. Why did you do that? Why do you want students up to the board?
Well, obviously I want students to be involved, and every time I have a chance to have kids take ownership, I do that. Number two, I want to see what they think, to be honest, because oftentimes we think students don't understand when they actually do, and vice versa. When we think they do understand, then you give them the pencil and you realize they're not there yet.
Yeah.
I saw it through the test that I just returned the day you showed up. Some of the concepts that are really obvious was actually hard on the kids, and some of the hard ones did a really good job on. So I had them get up and show the flow of the cash flow, if I may. As you can tell, I think they got the main idea, but at the same time, they didn't distinguish between the wealthy versus the middle class in terms of how they deal with cash flow.
I thought that was a really, really good concept that you talked about wealth over time, and that really resonated with me even. And I could see it did with a lot of them. You've talked about it before, I know in there, but that was like the most significant part of the class for me. I kind of would have, I know you were stressed for time and you were trying to put a lot of stuff together, but you might have had them actually pair up and try to work it out themselves as a suggestion maybe. I also thought that you called on students a lot, which was good. So you called on Thomas, Chris, Abdullah, and Ian and asked them specific questions.
Yeah.
And when they couldn't answer it, you were really good at kind of asking the rest to kind of help them out. So that was super positive. Expectations are there for students, but you're also not essentially, as I've seen some teachers do, making their confidence take a knock when they can't answer the question.
Right.
So that was really, really solid.
Thank you.
One thing that I don't do well is wait time. The idea of waiting for students to answer. Most teachers I've read, spend about a minute, not a minute, a second of wait time, and it should be as long as 7 seconds. Is what the experts predict. So
wait time is so important. The cold calling, as I called on those 4 or 5 kids, it can be advantageous and it can be bad if it's done incorrectly. Because you're not used to it, you're not used to doing it, and then you do it, then you catch kids off guard. If there is that, if it is part of the culture, they grow to expect it. In fact, the fact that they know whether or not I'm going to call on them, they start thinking and paying more attention. And I tend to draw in the kids who are a little more introverted, because I do want their inputs, and that's why sometimes I call on specific kids. But they're not surprised because it is part of the culture of the class. And as you said, when they don't get it, I just try to navigate through and have other kids help. But as you said, wait time is extremely important. As you said, we should wait for a minimum of 5 seconds. You said 7, but a minimum, and 5 seconds sounds like a long time, but it's really not, right?
Yeah, to synthesize their thoughts.
You're right. We don't give them wait time.
Do you actually do Harknesses in that class? I mean,
I do, especially in that class actually, because it's a little more conducive than other math classes. Math is about problem solving. They do a lot of group work, but it's not just me sitting around and talking. So they do a lot of board work. They go up on the board to the board, and they do a lot of group work. But that class is a lot more conducive to Harkness because of the nature of the conversations that can happen in that class.
So do you structure them, very formal? Do you have fishbowl Harknesses? It's kind of a big class. But
No, I don't. I'm very informal. I mean, I'm formal, but informal. The point for me is everybody feels vested, everybody feels valued, and it is inclusive. And for me, that's the bottom line. I actually don't grade based on Harkness. I do put in efforts. I do place some emphasis on efforts, and I guess that's part of Harkness, but I don't grade based on Harkness.
Okay, thank you. The lesson was awesome. It's a class that actually after the class I went to some individual students and asked them if what they thought of the class, and thought it was awesome. One kid, Ian, said it's the most significant thing he's done at school.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So it was brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you.
So
for
thank
coming.
you, and I'd like to do it again.
Yeah, thank you for the input.
Good man.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.